Bobby Herrera, what's the main thing that you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Skip, the main thing I've learned is that we share a strong desire to check what I call the ultimate box at the end of our story. Will my story matter? And as part of that journey, I have discovered the magical gift of struggle, because we all struggle.
That was The Main Thing. Timeless wisdom shared by our wise guests here on The Main Thing podcast. It resonated with us, perhaps rather deeply. You spoke up. You said, we want more from these wise thought leaders. We heard you loud and clear, and so we are reconnecting with a few of our most popular guests from seasons 1 and 2. We will revisit those guests and revisit their wisdom, their main thing. What will we find? Some say true north will always be true north. Others say there's nothing permanent except change. Has it remained the primary driving force in their life? Or has something new taken that place of prominence in their heart and mind? Here in this special episode of Wisdom Revisited, we'll find out how each prior guest has applied and perhaps evolved their wisdom. Here we go. Bobby Herrera, welcome to the show. It's great to be back with you.
Great to see you again, Skip.
Bobby, we just heard your main thing, your wisdom statement from July 2020, episode 27. Let's remind our listeners, before we talk about that, let's just give our listeners a little refresh about who you are, who they're hearing from today. Bobby, you're a CEO, you're the leader of the Populus Group, and you're the author of a terrific book titled The Gift of Struggle. Truly one of my all-time favorite books, so much so that I keep giving it away to other people and having to buy new copies. You are a veteran of the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service in that regard. And you're someone who grew up in a large family whose parents were hardworking migrants from Mexico. And interestingly, your hobbies include mountain climbing, and you come to us from the Portland, Oregon area. What else should we add to that very brief bio?
Hey, well, above all that, I'd say two things. Number one, a follower of Jesus Christ, a believer, and two, an all-pro dad. It's what I see as my most important mission in life.
Bobby, tell us how many kids.
I have 3 that keep me humble and all the wonderful other things that kids do.
Remind me the age ranges.
They are 13, 11, and 9, so
Okay.
A lot going on all the time.
Oh, yeah. Fun times, fun times.
What a blessing.
Bobby, you have a motto that I just love, hail the underdogs. Give us a backstory on that and why you continue to just repeat that phrase and share it with everyone that you meet.
Well, I mean, personally, I feel I was born an underdog. You know, I'm number 11 of 13. I grew up in a migrant farm working family. To say that our upbringing was modest would be a pretty significant understatement. And, you know, I'm not a real big guy. You know, I celebrated the fact that I hit the 5'8" mark. So football, I always played everyone was bigger than I was. So I had to rely on grit and scrap. And I think like most other people, Skip, I think we all love a good underdog story, a transformational story that we see ourselves in many cases. And I just always find myself rooting for the underdog.
So, Bobby, July 2020, we heard your main thing clip. I just wanted to ask you, since we were with you back then, what's new in your life other than a pandemic, and hopefully that's in the rearview mirror? Give us a little update on what's been going on since you were last with us.
Well, Skip, I think it could best be said, I think one of the things I've learned that is, pleasant experiences, they make our life delightful.
Yes.
But painful experiences lead to growth. And I can't imagine many people out there right now over the course of the last couple of years, they can say the ledger's probably heavier on the painful experience side than it is on the, pleasant experience side. And, for me, it's been a combination of, my business has been significantly challenged. There's been a lot of changes in my personal life, and there's been so many people out there that I'm close to that have completely rethought not only what they're doing in life now, but what they want to do in their next chapter. And, that has a ripple effect across the board. For me, I think I'm still in a very fortunate position to where I have more blessings and burdens, and that's a victory. It's always a victory.
Yes. Yes.
But the world right now is so challenged with what's happening with talent and wage inflation and supply, demand. There's not a business leader out there right now that's just not trying to figure out, like, how do I survive in this environment? So that's been really challenging.
Yeah. Well said. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I have this thought pretty frequently that, to your point, I really don't know anyone in my circle of friends who just has easy breezy right now. No one that you talk to is without struggle. And if we believe in your book title, that struggle's a gift. And gosh, I know it's been a hard go the last 2 years for our family as well. Mm-hmm. But we've been shaped by it. I know I'm different, and I think I'm better, and I think I'm more resilient, and I think my heart is softer than it was 2 years ago, and that's a very good thing.
Yeah. Amen, especially the last part.
Bobby Herrera, has your main thing changed, or is your main thing still your main thing?
So yes to both of those. It's still the main thing, and it's actually changed in the sense that it's been amplified.
Take us through that, Bobby. Walk us through that. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that.
I have a very wise, mentor, and I went to visit him in Florida last year, and we were just having a, in-depth conversation. He's a very stoic gentleman I've learned a lot from, and he just asked me out of the blue. He said, "Hey, Bobby, how many days do you have left?" And I'm like, I'm all, well, I hope a lot. He said, well, hypothetically, let's say you live to be X. And he threw a couple of different markers out there for me. I said, how many? He asked me, how many days is that? And we did the math. And I started I think for the first time I realized, I'm 54 in November, so I still feel like I have a lot of energy and runway left, God willing.
Yeah.
But I started realizing that, I think it's about this time that most men really start intentionally visiting the impact that they want to leave on their children, the impact they want to leave on their family, the impact they want to leave on the world. And with everything that's happened in the last couple of years during this interesting chapter that we're in, it's actually taken me through an editing exercise. And I've really simplified, what I believe my life plan is going forward. And I've looked at these accounts that really matter to me, and I've reassessed it in a way to where I can ask myself, all right, how am I going to live forward and intentionally build progress towards these things that I say are very important to me? And I do a thing I call it the triangle of love. So I feel that the things that really matter to you, Skip, if you can self-assess how much they really mean to you if you apply the triangle of love, and that's time, energy, and money, right? And if
three corners of a triangle.
Yeah, the three corners of a triangle. And so I started looking at these 9 accounts, and I started self-assessing, like, how well am I actually applying the triangle of love to these areas that I say are most important to me. And there were some areas where it didn't look the way that I wanted to look, Skip. And so that's where I say it's changed in that I've raised my own standards on how I want to apply the triangle of love to each of these areas of my life that I'm saying are most important to me.
Did I make an impact in this world? Did my life matter? So I'm hearing that you are still led by that guiding wisdom, but you are getting more refined in your navigation toward that.
As I unpack that myself, Skip, I think what I did is I had the why, right? So I knew I'm like by the invisible force that drives me is still the same.
Yes.
Right? And I had a pretty good understanding of the what in terms of like, okay, well, what are the things that are important to me? But what I needed to do is raise the ante on the how. And that's where the magic happens is, how. And
right.
I often feel like, at least my observation with my own reflection of these areas that are important to me is, there's not enough on the how. Right. So.
Love it. Dialed in, focused, intentional. You are a fabulous storyteller, and I love your stories. They're in your book, in our conversations, and content that we share with each other. Where does that come from in you? Is that something that you've polished over your lifetime? Is this something that someone modeled for you, or were you just kind of born that way?
I inherited it from my dad. My dad was a fascinating storyteller. I didn't realize the gift he was giving me, Skip.
Okay.
You and I have talked offline. I call my dad the Mexican John Wayne.
John Wayne. I love that nickname. Yeah.
He had a story for everything. And often if I asked him a question or if I was dealing with something, he had his way about him where he'd say, son, let me tell you a story. And he would bring to life for me with a story that connected to whatever I was dealing with or what we were working with. And
right.
Of course, growing up,
you could insert yourself in the story. You could attribute your own relevance to it and come to your conclusion.
Yeah.
It's a great way to lead, inspire, parent.
Yeah. And he would tell me the story and then he would say, son, I told you that story because, and then he would explain it to me. And of course, back then I'd roll my eyes and I'm like, I don't want to hear another story, Dad. But then I remember as I was approaching like my late 20s, early 30s, as I was starting to get more leadership responsibility, like I would catch myself saying, well, let me tell you a story. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming my dad.
Becoming my dad. Oh, yeah.
And then I became a fierce student of storytelling. And then I actually started studying it. And I tell you what, it's been a fabulous gift that I've been able to, use to, help others with their story.
Yes.
And, I think the more I study story, like we've been sitting around campfires for centuries telling stories. That's what we do when we get together with our friends. We tell more stories. Like we're wired for story.
We are.
It works.
You have another phrase, another motto that has really inspired me, and it's just really kind of whacked me upside the head. You talk about living in a way and facing challenges and facing pivotal moments in a manner where we are to pick the hardest right decision instead of the easiest wrong option. Can you sharpen that up for me? I think I got close, but I would love to hear you talk just a little bit about that. And for our listeners who haven't heard that before, maybe you can give us an example of why that's an important way to think and live.
So it's choose the hardest right over the easiest wrong.
Okay.
And, I would speculate that there's very few people that that doesn't resonate with when it really comes down to thinking about most things that really matter to us, like it's an uphill climb. Right? We think we want easy, but we really don't, because we know, like I mentioned earlier, like pleasant experiences, like they make our life delightful, but painful experiences, they lead to growth. And often choosing the hardest right over the easiest wrong, that's synonymous with it's going to take more effort. It's going to require you to get through the pain, and that's a one-way street.
There's going to be a little extra muscle soreness.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And if it's meaningful and if it's worthwhile, it's most likely going to be synonymous with being an uphill climb.
How do you find and cultivate and curate wisdom, fit it in with your value system? How do you go about that?
Well, yeah, that's a big question, Skip. Every day when I drop my kids off, when I either take them to or from school. And if I'm not taking them to school, after I, make breakfast for them and stuff, I'll give them a hug. And I always say to them, be wise, ask lots of questions. I've been saying that to them for years. So first and foremost, I always try to be very aware of what my question to statement ratio is every day. So am I asking more questions than statements? So first and foremost, that's an assessment that I believe anyone else can do. Now, that's everyday interactions with other people that teach me, many things. Now, when it comes to my sources, I think that's really valuable for us to self-assess. My pastor recommended a book to me that I think you've also had an opportunity to read called The Wisdom Pyramid. And it's a short, simple, it's a short, simple, palatable read. Yeah, that really challenged me to reflect on what my sources of wisdom, or i.e. my sources of knowledge were. Like, where am I acquiring my knowledge, and in what order, in what ratio, and how am I going about it, right? And so it's a fascinating way to self-assess where I'm getting my wisdom from, what the ratio is. I mean, most people rely on technology, and going through the wisdom period, it actually challenges you to reconsider the longevity of everything that we can actually get through technology. And just for the listeners, it's a great book. I recommend you check it out. I'm going to stick a link to The Wisdom Pyramid by Brett McCracken in the show notes, along with a link, Bobby, to your book, The Gift of Struggle. I read a lot of books, but as I started reflecting on what I was reading, I realized that most of the books that I was reading were current day under just a couple of specific categories. Well, I made a shift, and I then started reading like one old book for every two new books. And even within the two new books, I've started picking topics that either challenge me or that I'm not aware of. And as I've done that, it's been an eye-opening experience for me. And it's helped me take more joy in being wrong and in being ignorant. So it's been a fascinating, redirective experience for me just in how I read and what I read.
Yeah, very cool. I have done sort of an assessment of my sources and inputs, and I'm going to diversify that. I'm going to stretch in certain directions and add some missing nutrients to my wisdom food groups. So thank you for that recommendation. It was very helpful. I'm not all the way through the book yet, but I'm about halfway through, and I love it. I'm going to quickly finish it up probably in the next day or two.
That's great. I'm glad it served you.
Bobby, let's talk a little bit about your work. How have you led the Populus Group during this very challenging past 2 years? What did you discover as a leader that helped you to lead during a pandemic?
When it first happened, Skip, I introduced, I'm big on vernacular and introducing a common language, as I led my community Populus Group. And one of the first things I did is I introduced the term manage the VUCA. And VUCA is actually a term that I learned when I was in the military. And VUCA is an acronym that was introduced through the Army War College a while back, and it was something that was hammered into me when I was active duty in the military.
Oh, wow.
And it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so I introduced that
VUCA.
Manage the VUCA, almost from day one when the pandemic started. And our mission as an executive team was, hey, we're going to manage the VUCA. And we're going to help make sure that everybody manages the VUCA. And we introduced routines, we introduced rhythms, we simplified everything to help us manage the VUCA. So in very simple terms, when there's a lot of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, my responsibility as leadership was to slow the game down. Right? Okay. People have a tendency to want to accelerate, to want to do things faster, but that's when mistakes happen. I did the opposite. I'm like, we're going to slow things down. We're going to focus on what matters. We're going to focus on what are those things that we can control, and of those things that we can control, which ones are most important and which ones should we do first. And I've continued that throughout this entire pandemic chapter that we're in, because the VUCA keeps coming just in different variations. And
doesn't it? Yes.
It's been an evolution of VUCA since we were first introduced to it in March of 2020. And so that lives on. Matter of fact, earlier today, I was talking to 5 of my seasoned leaders about, how well they're managing the VUCA, what the VUCA looks like for them. And so those are things that I've done, Skip, because I think the more I can introduce a vernacular that they can touch and appreciate, that helps them also say, so it's not just me. I'm not the only one going crazy.
Right. Yes.
I've slowed the game down as much as I can, simplified it. I've done a lot of editing, and at the same time, we're still in that foxhole. Right?
Yes, we are.
The days are punching, but we're punching back.
Bobby, I want to wrap up with this question. What do you see on the horizon?
Well, I think for me right now, Skip, is no different than it was to what I said at the beginning of a conversation. I have 6 little eyes that are watching every move I make. And, above everything that I do is answering the question that I ask for myself, that I ask myself is, hey, who am I becoming? Well, I answer it for them, because they're going to become the adult that they see me become. So I lead with that and keep that the main part of my life, the main part of the legacy that I'm building for them. But, my purpose around helping kids born on the wrong side of the opportunity divide and helping veterans and veterans entrepreneurs, I'm making some big bets on, those accounts that I mentioned earlier on how I really do things to serve them. So those would be the 2 to 3 areas for me where you're going to see me applying the triangle of love that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Perfect. Bobby, thank you so much for coming back on. This has been just a great conversation, very inspiring to me. Stay in touch, keep going, and I can't thank you enough for coming back and revisiting your wisdom.
Always a joy, Skip, and hail the underdogs.
Wow, 9 minutes is up. That goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. I hope you're left wanting more. Sync up with us again next time on The Main Thing for 9 more minutes of wisdom. Let's be honest, it's not easy to ask for help or talk about money. Hey, it's Skip here, and many listeners like you continue to ask me, what do you need to continue to develop and build this show? Well, for context, it takes our team about 15 hours of work to produce each one of these packages of wisdom that we deliver to you in podcast form. Really, what we need as we enter season 3 of this show is funding to cover our costs. So in response, I formed a site on the Patreon platform where you can elect to become a supporting patron of the Main Thing podcast. Now, there are 3 levels you might consider, ranging from $6 to $27 per month. It's all safe and secure, and you can explore the options at patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. Now, how will we use the funding? Funds provided by you and other patrons will be used to defray the costs of production, promotion, and our recurring technology expenses each month. In short, you will be helping to keep this pipeline of wisdom flowing. Thanks.